Hello and welcome to Long Beach Lens. I'm your host, Darick J. Simpson, Executive Director of the Long Beach Community Action Partnership. Today our guests are LaVerne Duncan, who is the Executive Director for the Andy Street Community Association. We also have a mentor and a friend, Dr. Alex Norman, a Professor Emeritus at UCLA School of Public Affairs. Please join me in welcoming LaVerne Duncan and Dr. Alex Norman. How are you guys?
Oh,
We're
doing
fine.
great.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, it's my pleasure because we're coming up in a few months on a very special event to this community, and specifically in the African American community. But as is said, Black history is American history.
That's
Yes,
correct.
yes.
We're going to
So
share
true.
all of that. And so, LaVerne, let's start with you by giving us a snapshot of what we can expect in 2019 for that celebration in February.
Well, Darick, this is our 7th annual Black History Month event, and it is a free, unique, multicultural event.
Okay.
I mean, it's educational for members of the community. We have the youth that are involved. We have partners that are that bring something else to the event. So it's a full 3 days of educational and arts and music and panel discussions. So we have the fun, we have the music, we have the serious. So there's something for everyone at that.
Right. Now, LaVerne, before we go into the future,
Mm-hmm.
what's the history? What's the genesis? Was this all you that lifted this off the ground? Because I know I've been there sometimes where you're just exhausted beyond breath, and yet you keep pushing. So
Well,
how did this all begin?
Interestingly enough, it all began with you, Darick.
That wasn't a lead-in question, right?
No, but not many people may remember. We started out as a showcase for the African American Convening Committee, of
Right.
which you were one of the responsible people, and you too, Dr. Norman, founding members of that committee. And we wanted to show, in addition to the state of Black Long Beach, we wanted to really have a little celebration. And we started out really in one small room
I remember that,
at
yeah.
the Expo Center, in which we featured Black authors, and we featured the Forgotten Images, a small portion of the Forgotten Images exhibit. And we also had some information about what was happening in the city of Long Beach. And we found out that we had people lined up outside the door waiting
Wow.
to get in to this exhibit. And so the following year, the Blair Cohn of the Bixby Knolls Business Improvement Association, he said, would you do it again? But I'll be more than happy to give you more space. And that began where I said, oh, I have a lot to offer.
Yeah. As do we as a community.
As
have
we,
a lot
we
to
it
offer.
talked about,
Right.
I really want to stress that this is all about the contributions of African Americans, not just to our community here in the city of Long Beach, but in our communities and in society as a whole, because we do have a lot to offer. And our main exhibit, which is the Forgotten Images exhibit, really brings that home for the fact that it really showcases authentic African American artifacts, arts, music
Right.
from the 1600s. It chronicles the civil rights movement all the way through the present. So that's part of what we do.
And we're showing some of those images as we're talking about this because, if I'm not mistaken, it's said that Sharon McLucas, who owns this exhibit along with her husband,
Right.
it's one of the largest exhibits west of the Mississippi and only second to maybe the Smithsonian. She has incredible work.
Absolutely, and to tell you a little bit more about that, Sharon and David McLucas are also very well versed in African American history, so they do tours. And what we exhibit is almost 1,000 pieces of African American contribution.
1,000 pieces.
1,000 pieces.
Wow.
So when you come to this event, that is the main showcase, and it's in a 23,000 square foot building. And that is that you bring your whole family, because we have everyone. It's community wide. We have everyone coming Every ethnic group comes. And it's really a showcase of what Long Beach is all about.
It's great.
Also.
It's great. Now, Dr. Norman, as we're talking about this, I know clearly we were both involved, as she was just stating, but the State of Black Long Beach was a document that you and colleagues created that was sort of the genesis of what we were doing in that particular year. But you've brought it forward now with another document that you've created called African American Leadership at a Crossroads. Can you give some perspective in the two documents and how that transition occurred?
Yes, well, the first document really was a result of a question by the interim director of the African American Convening Committee, Uduak Took, who raised the question of what's the state of Black Long Beach? And a couple of meetings, I thought, well, what is the state of Black Long Beach? So patterning after the Urban League's State of Black America and the recent publication of State of Black Los Angeles, I then set forth to look at the data and the history of Black Long Beach. And so the conference, having been attended by so many people, meant that there was a tremendous amount of interest. My surprise, however, was that interest wasn't carried over into some kind of organizing effort.
Right.
And so for years, I really questioned, why didn't that happen? And after a while, I began to just jot my own opinions down. And that evolved into this document called The Crossroads of African American Leadership.
And I read both documents in their entirety, and one of the things that intrigued me about the more current one now, at a Crossroads, is that you paint the picture from leadership from Booker T. Washington and W.B. Du Bois and Marcus Garvey, and talking about those three distinct styles of leadership, and bring it all the way forward to the African American Convening Committee. And I think that talking about history, LaVerne, is a way to bring history to life in that particular document. And we talk about local leadership versus national leadership. If you think about that right now, Dr. Norman, in terms of your perspectives on the state of leadership locally versus nationally in the African American community, what thoughts come to mind?
It's almost like, what's the saying, if those who refuse to recognize history are bound to repeat it.
Right.
In the beginning, African American leadership was very individually charismatic. So individuals had their own goals, and they were pursuing those independent of other individuals, even though all were valid. They even competed with each other. They competed for the national stage, they competed for finances. And it seems that cresting with the civil rights movement, in which it brought all of that leadership together and was most effective, we're now going back to the older model while we're pursuing things individually, which might be very good, but we're not getting the national payoff because we're not coordinating the efforts.
Right.
And I think it's that coordination of effort that we need, that is missing right now. And that's why I think that we're at a crossroads, because we have to decide, do we go with what's most effective, or do we go with what's most popular?
And that's unfortunate, because I know also in reading through some of the work that you've done, you talk about the fact that as a result of the election of Barack Obama, it seemed to evoke more hatred in America from whites than inspire pride and in our nation's ability to see beyond race and leadership. That's a profound statement as well. Can you share your thoughts on that?
Well, we forget that this country was really based on white supremacy, European white supremacy, which was superior to all other civilizations, and the religion, the culture, the music, everything. So that was really the foundation. And that foundation is embedded in the Constitution because it's flawed, because at that time, African Americans were 3/5 of a person. Women were not even considered. And Native American population, that were the original group here, had been genocided out of existence. So that white supremacy never really gave up. After the Civil War, the Ku Klux Klan developed. That was, again, a white supremacy-oriented group. Even during the Civil Rights Movement, the white citizens' councils developed. So the white supremacy is always there. So Barack Obama, the election of the Obama, especially the second term, created a backlash unlike anything we've ever seen. The Tea Party, which again is a white backlash group. And so what happened was that when the current president, whose name I refuse to mention, was elected, what it did was allowed other groups that felt the same as the white supremacists to show their true colors. And so what we're suffering now is a tremendous backlash that reveals that there's a lot more racism in our society than we thought initially.
I care to acknowledge, yes, and it's that looking back at history that you have and the way you present it, along with this current dialogue that's important, not just to African Americans, but to all Americans to have and engage in that will be shared that weekend. We've got so much more to discuss, but we also have a break. So we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we will continue our conversation with LaVerne Duncan and Dr. Alex Norman. Stay tuned for more of Long Beach Lens.
PadNet is a public access channel where they help up-and-coming people who want to make a difference in their community and also want to learn about starting their own show, learn about production, broadcasting. Just is a great start for somebody who actually don't necessarily want to go to school, but also get the experience.
Hi, I'm Vicky Vicious, and I'm one of the hosts for Road Dogs TV.
I'm Susie Q, Road Dogs TV.
People all the time, they've heard of the show, so they always ask, how do you do it? And they actually have this program, and they'll teach you how to use the equipment. They'll help you produce.
So we rent out the equipment, we get to use the studio, most importantly, get to share our art, our culture, and the people that we know to the rest of the community.
I'm not a technical person, so I was really scared to touch the equipment. But PadNet, taking the classes here made me feel really comfortable, and they let you practice. I just really like the hands-on, the experience, and it's a family atmosphere here, and I just love it. Everybody's so friendly, classes are fun, and people help with your shows, and it's great.
I think PadNet's been very helpful with the sense of I've met a lot of new people here. The networking is amazing. A lot of people have some good experiences where I can learn from. I've enjoyed myself here at PadNet.
Anyone that has the idea or wanting to see what it's like to be on camera, behind camera, be on TV, this is the best way to go about it, because if you're too afraid to do your own show, there's so many members in PadNet that need help, whether it's in the background or foreground. It's a perfect opportunity for anybody that wants to have that access and to be able to learn something new. This is where you need to go.
Welcome back. I'm Darick J. Simpson. Joining us in the studio is LaVerne Duncan and Dr. Alex Norman. And we've been talking about, LaVerne, your work to create the 2019 version of Black History Month here in Long Beach. When you think about what you're doing there at the Expo and celebrating in our community, I know that there are other such events around the county and around the nation for that matter, but what makes ours here in Long Beach unique, LaVerne?
One of the things that makes it unique is that we try to include everyone in it. It's not just considered a Black History Month event. It is a multicultural event. And the best way to do that, it's been growing every year, is that we are partnering with the Caribbean Heritage organization out of LA, which has allowed us to invite their communities in also. So we have the island of Haiti, we have the island of Jamaica, the island of Belize, all these groups that are coming in to be a part and share their history also with us. We also have our youth that comes in. We have a whole day devoted to the youth of Long Beach, and we have people from the Long Beach Unified School District, the kids from middle school, from the high school, come in and they perform, whether it's poetry or it's, one year we had a youth business expo, at a contest for them. So we try to incorporate the different facets of society into it. We've had small business, a small business day. And in 2019, for the first time, we have a collaboration with the LGBTQ Center and Black Lesbians United, and they're holding a reception on that Thursday so that it's inclusive of everyone and that has ever had to fight for their civil rights. And that's part of what we do. I really want people to know that there is one event that's going to be held on that Saturday, February 2nd, and it's all about the African American leadership, and I like to say African American community at a crossroads. And it starts at 11 on Saturday, and we have some distinguished, very distinguished people, including Dr. Norman, on that panel which you're moderating. And I want to encourage everyone, and I mean everyone, to come and listen to this because it talks about what we're doing here in the city of Long Beach and where we are.
And we also have up on the screen that you have a luncheon that's got a very distinguished guest even before Saturday.
That's
right?
correct.
Tell us about that.
On Friday, February 1st, we have our first annual CEO Diversity Award Luncheon, in which we will be honoring those companies that really practice what they preach. And what that means is that it's not just saying they have diversity, but you can see it throughout their corporate structure, and they have demonstrated an awareness of not just the challenges, but the opportunities that are available in diversity. Our special keynote speaker is Carmen Smith, who is Vice President of Imagineering at Walt Disney, who is also from Long Beach. And she is going to talk because one of her titles used to be on global diversity. She was in charge of global diversity at Disney. So it's going to be very exciting, and it's going to be a powerful weekend. We are going to be honoring some of our local corporations like St. Mary's Medical Center, Dignity Health, that have demonstrated that they are diversity here.
And speaking of St. Mary's, and you mentioned the panels.
Yes.
Carolyn Caldwell, CEO of St. Mary's, is going to be on our health panel.
That is correct.
And she's an amazing woman in her
She
own
is.
right. So, Dr. Norman, when I heard about what was happening and I read your most current document, I went to LaVerne and it's like, wow, if you give us some space, we can get PatNet there to maybe record 3 panels, one of which is going to have you featured to talk about the African American community at a crossroads. And then in your document, you mentioned quality of life indicators. We couldn't get all 6 of them, but we are going to focus, in addition to your panel, on health as a community health focus, and then one on education and economic development. We had to combine those to get it all in. But tell us about the quality of life indicators and why those were important to include in your Crossroads document.
Yes, well, the National Urban League created a scale by which they measured the quality of life of black people in America. Rather than look at a scale which would suggest that we knew what was and what was not a standard of a normal standard, what we wanted to do was simply pull the data out and let the data speak for itself. So we looked at education and where blacks stood in terms of education with the rest of Long Beach. We looked at poverty. We looked at health, economic development. The important thing is that when you look at the percentage of African Americans in poverty, the percentage tells you those that are receiving services without contributing to the tax base. So that would indicate that the larger the group taking from the services and not contributing to the tax base, the more of a risk the city is at for bankruptcy. For example, a tipping point has been suggested that when a city is when 25% of its people are involved in poverty, that because they're draining so much from city services, that eventually it's not sustainable. And so the city then will essentially crash. It'll go into bankruptcy. Well, those quality of life indicators were really descriptors of how well, how poorly African Americans in Long Beach are performing. So we can measure those from year to year. For example, if the percentage of poverty drops among African Americans, then we can assume an improvement. If the educational scores increase, then we can assume an improvement. If employment increases, we can expect an improvement. So that's what I meant by quality of life indicators.
And as you say this, it's another example of how African American history and its status in any given community at any given time impacts a ripple effect around everything else. So if you can uplift any segment of our community, let alone the African American community, the entire city and community does better for itself. And that's what we have to understand.
Yeah. Well, the saying is that a rising tide lifts all boats, unless the boat has a hole in it. and for some of us, there's a hole in that boat, so no amount of lifting the tide is gonna make us rise.
Excellent observation. LaVerne, the event's just a couple of months away from the time that we record this show. How can the community get involved? I mean, I see you running around like 5 people in one, wearing many hats. But if someone's watching this and wants to volunteer, can they? And if they can, how can people follow up with you?
Well, that's a real good question. And yeah, there is 5 of me. There are 5 of me running around. But there are people that volunteer, and they can go to our website, Andy Street LB, and that's street spelled out LB like Long Beach.org, and they'll be able to contact me from there, and they'll be able to volunteer. There's a tab that says volunteer also. But I do want to say is the Andy Street Community Association got involved with this, yes, originally with the African American Convening Committee, but I saw a need and I also saw a desire for people to know more. Our part of our mission is to empower communities, not just Long Beach, communities with the courage to believe, grow, and improve themselves. And that's what this event reflects. It reflects you coming to hear about and be educated on ways in which you can contribute also. And that's why it's so important to have subjects like African American leadership at a crossroads, because you get information that you need to see how you can be a part of contributing to how we all make it together.
And I will say that as our goal is, as we present the panel discussions, we will have a way for the community that does attend to write notes and stick them on flip charts so that we can capture that information, and hopefully we here at Long Beach Community Action Partnership can use that in our community action plan and share that information with the community at large. Dr. Norman, when you think about the Crossroads document that you've written, what would you like to see its impact be in the community as a result of the effort that you've put into it? Not just the African American community, but the community at large. What would you like to see the lifespan of it be?
Well, you know, our history is American history. And I think that we need some conversations. We need a lot of conversations across the city, whether they take place in the kitchens or whether they take place in the living rooms or in convention halls, about the state of black people, you know, and the context in which this country was really formed. I mean, it's playing out right now with the Charlottesville and the white nationalists. I mean, we really are a country in crisis. I mean, we may be at the crossroads as African Americans, but the country is in crisis. And we really need some conversations. And I'm hoping that this document will at least begin to raise the questions in some of the people's minds, as it raised in my mind. Why do certain things happen, and why do not certain things happen? And what's the context in which those things do or do not happen? And it seems to me that one of the things that we need to really look at is what has been the legacy of slavery on African Americans? And there has been a legacy that continues today.
Right.
Because no other group in the country has had a 400 and some year plus assault on their humanity like African Americans. Even today, with a president who shows unbelievable intellectual capacity, a White House family with no drama and with unbelievable contributions, and yet that family is stereotyped because they're black.
So much more to discuss, and we can't do it all here, but if people show up in February, we'll get more. I'd like to thank LaVerne Duncan and Dr. Alex Norman for joining us on today's show. Be sure to follow PatNet TV on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for the latest updates. We also welcome your comments and thoughts regarding this show as we strive to make Long Beach Lens a favorite source of local news, information, and entertainment. This show has been brought to you with support from the Long Beach Community Action Partnership. Thank you for watching Long Beach Lens, and thank you to our guests today.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.